Host and moderator Ryan Ruff. It's good to be back with you today. And as always, I'm joined by Homer, private wealth advisor, and we're going to be tackling another wealth management related topic today. And if you're a frequent listener or viewer of the show, you know that Homer and I have had discussions surrounding, wealth planning, of course, but with regard to different life events that take place. You know, let's face it, wealth sometimes can occur very suddenly. And along with that sudden change of wealth, well, it comes a lot of new challenges, a lot of new issues that people need to be addressing in their lives. So today on the show, we thought it'd be helpful to examine some of the ideas and action steps that people can be considering if you or maybe someone else in your life becomes very wealthy very rapidly. So before we get into the nitty gritty of that, let's go ahead and say hi to the man of the hour, Homer. It is good to see you today. How are you doing, sir?
I'm well, Ryan. Good to see you as always.
Yeah, always good to be with you, Homer. Today we're talking about this idea of sudden wealth and what to be thinking about and really doing if you happen to go through a very significant financial change in your life. But Homer, to kind of kick the conversation off, how often would you say people essentially strike it rich these days? Any metrics, anything worth noting off the top?
Yeah, I'd say sudden wealth in terms of an unexpected, very large wealth event is not the most common or very reliable way. Really, as we speak to in most of our conversations around wealth, most significant wealth is created through, lots of effort over long periods of time. An entrepreneur, a founder creating a business, then ultimately getting to a liquidity event. But there are times where these significant wealth events can occur, whether it's an inheritance, whether that might have been expected or not. Sometimes a divorce could result in a pretty significant access to the wealth from an ex-spouse. Other things like a significant stock payout from stock options, or even though it may have been expected, the receipt of liquidity from a sale of your business. Most of the business owners we work with, through the building of their business and reinvested, a good chunk of any profits they might have had over the years into building the business out. So they never had access to extreme liquidity, and all of a sudden it's a dramatic change in what their world looks like. And then the one-off that happens from time to time, things like the lottery. So these things can occur, and it can be a dramatic change in people's lives when they receive this kind of liquidity.
Sure, and I'm sure that influx of liquidity is very appealing, but I would imagine that the sudden wealth also comes with some of the some risks or potential downsides, if you will. Why don't you talk to us about those?
Yeah, I think there's probably people are probably more familiar with this from things like lottery winners than anything else, where you hear the stories that sometimes within just a few years, but usually within 5 or 10 years, that these lottery winners who might have won tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in the lottery, are suddenly penniless. And so, getting this kind of wealth, especially if you're not used to having that kind of wealth previous to a large liquidity event, often brings on as many problems as it does solutions. And so, most of the people who get these types of events were living maybe paycheck to paycheck before they got them. And now they just have a massively large paycheck. So it's really easy to get sucked into situations that might bleed that out. It's a very overwhelming experience for these people, often emotionally, because it might have come from an inheritance from the death of a family member, or again, just this sudden euphoria from winning the lottery. So it does. It's not as simple as it might seem with all that kind of wealth. It does create a lot of challenges for these families that receive it.
Of course, and Homer. So, how do you navigate that sudden wealth if it were to happen to you, or maybe even a child of yours, or a family member? And how basically where do you start? I guess is a great way to frame up the next question. How do you have a first step in a positive reaction towards that sudden wealth if it does happen to you?
Yeah, I think the first step is you got to pay attention to relationships, and I think that what happens a lot, you hear it a lot with athletes, where all of a sudden family members come out of the woodworks to need a loan or to help with various things, and it happens the same thing happens with inheritances, where friends from that you haven't talked to in years all of a sudden are reaching out to you with this great business idea. So I think one of the first step is really to to assess how, what the potential is for how these relationships might be impacted, that you have from getting this sudden wealth, and to start to think through who are the types of people that you're going to want to have around you that are going to help you navigate some of this, because I think that that risk is pretty large out there, for the many people that now are going to be bombarding you, and even the impact it could have on a marriage if you're married, and all of a sudden the types of decisions you're going to have to make together are very different than the types of decisions you were making previous to that.
No, absolutely. And a lot of this sounds like kind of maybe the existing relationships that you had in your life prior to the wealth. But Homer, let's talk about maybe some of the new relationships that come along or down the pipeline after that wealth. Any thoughts on maybe some of those new relationships and how that could play an interesting factor into the wealth that you've generated?
Yeah, I think there's two sides of this the way I think about it. The first is, if you're, let's say you're not married and you're now reaching out, and or you're in a relationship, can you really tell if that person is there, for your wealth, or are they really interested in you? And so I think that that's an issue that you're going to have to deal with much more. I think the other side of it, so that's going to come up with a lot of relationships, friendships, people reaching out for business relationships. What are they really there for? Are they there for the money, or are they there because they really, are interested in a partnership and a true friendship? I think the other side of it, from a relationship standpoint, is the types of professionals that you have around you. And I know we're going to get to that in a little bit as well, but I think that's the other side of this that's going to be important: is who are you putting yourself around to help you think through all of this?
Homer, on this show, we talk a lot about, just great strategies, great solutions that people can be implementing, but almost equally as effectively, it's beneficial to talk about some of the mistakes or those pitfalls that people should be avoiding. So when it comes to this idea of that influx of sudden wealth in somebody's world, are there any certain mistakes that those suddenly wealthy people tend to make more than others, and anything people should be on the lookout for?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of traps, that we should speak to, that have the biggest risk that could help quickly erode, some of this newfound wealth, and end up penniless, with in such a short amount of time. I think one is giving away too much money. Again, most of the people that get this kind of sudden wealth never had that kind of liquidity before, and they see all sorts of needs around them, whether it's family, friends, organizations they care about, and they want to do good, for the world, but they don't do the math quickly enough on what they still need themselves to be able to live a good lifestyle, for the rest of their life, and make this money last. And the money goes away too quickly, whether it's, again, giving it away to others, or spending it, too extravagantly, which is the second part of this. Is, again, if you have this wealth, you want to have nicer homes, nicer cars, you want to buy things for other people as well. And again, if you're not really doing the math, I mean, a lot of times these events come with tax implications, lottery being the particular one, where the first number you hear sounds like a lot until you take all the taxes and take the lump sum penalty and all those sorts of things. It's not nearly as much as you thought. And even if an inheritance, or a business transaction, all of a sudden, you spend money very quickly, and the pot you have left to live your lifestyle, is no longer what it needs to be, and you can spend that down very quickly. So really, it's important to focus on, what really is necessary versus what's excess, and what are these things going to cost. What are some nice to haves, and what are those going to cost, and then what are the not importance but they'd be great, and what is that going to cost, and really doing the math on what's possible, and not trying to ignore the really nice things, and not being able to treat yourself, but being very careful that by doing that you're not putting yourself in a tougher position long term.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Let's double click a little further into that then, in terms of the management really of that wealth. What are the challenges or mistakes you see people go about when it does come to the actual managing of it? Let's say investing, making sure that it's truly prolonged over a period of time.
Yeah, I think there's a number of planning areas that are really critical to focus on. I think, well, let's start with just the investment side, which, we're wealth managers. That's what many people think we focus on, is the investments, which is definitely an important part of what we do. You're going to have all sorts of people coming at you, in whether it's friends, family, or investment advisors, with all sorts of planning ideas or investment ideas that are going to, enhance this wealth for you. And unfortunately, a lot of those people just don't have the experience, the background, or they're just outright looking at fraud to try to take this money from you. And so, there's going to be a risk, just on the investment side, if you get too aggressive. Also, a lot of the professionals you might have dealt with prior to receiving this kind of wealth just may not have the experience and background necessary to plan for this kind of wealth. Whether it's an estate planning attorney that would have been fine for your basic wills and powers of attorney and things of that nature, but how to navigate the complexities that come with significant wealth, they may not be the right fit. Same thing with, even your tax professionals or your wealth managers. If they're not working with other families with that kind of wealth, they may not, it's not that they're look out to do bad. They just may not be prepared to help you navigate the challenges and complexities of what that kind of wealth creates. So I think having a team around you that's, consummate professionals that focus on working with clients with this level of wealth is going to be really important. I think also one area that is missed a lot is, usually with this kind of wealth comes a lot more public notoriety. So, these events might even be required, like the lottery, that you are part of an advertising campaign. And so it's easier to find you when you have this kind of wealth. So making sure that you're an unattractive target for those that might be out to exploit you is going to be important. So again, there's planning, there's work
Mhm.
to be done in that area, and you need a professional that understands how to do that for you to make sure you're taken care of.
Yeah, and Hummer, we've talked about that a lot on, in different episodes on this show, working with that right team of professionals to make sure that your wealth sees you through the long term. But Homer, aside from that idea of the professionals that are seeking you out in these moments, let's talk about maybe some of the dangers or the litigants that could come along, because we talk about asset protection on this show a lot. Uh, what about that side of this equation, and how focused should somebody be thinking about asset protection now that this sudden wealth has come into their world?
I think it really should be one of the most important issues, even before
Yeah.
some of the investment ideas and tax planning really should be the asset protection planning. Because again, unfortunately, with this kind of wealth is going to come a lot more of a target on your back. And so whether that is um, you directly who have received this wealth, where lawsuits might all of a sudden start appearing, or unfortunately, it could mean divorce. If there was already friction in your relationship, and now you've got this pot of money, and this current spouse might see a way out, and to take a lot of that with you, if you're not planning for that correctly, and making sure some of these assets might be separate is really important. Um, and also, I think what's often missed is then thinking through to the next generation. So maybe everything is great for you and you're well set up, but when your kids inherit these funds, your grandkids, is it also then set up for them to protect and make sure those assets stay in the family and don't leak out through frivolous lawsuits and divorce? So I think this is a hugely important area, and probably one that gets missed almost more than any other when we're planning for clients like this.
Of course, of course. And Homer, as we're kind of bringing our conversation to a head here today, let's call a spade a spade. It really does seem like there are a lot of issues that can come when these moments arise in somebody's life and they achieve this level of sudden wealth. In your mind, kind of big picture, why don't you bottom line it for us? What is How should somebody really ultimately manage this situation, again, in that big picture mindset?
Yeah, so I think there's a few areas that if you become suddenly wealthy, that you're going to want to methodically work through. The first one is I'd slow down. Before you go out and make any major investments, major purchases, is make sure you have a good assessment of your situation. So you've done the work to understand what are, if any, are tax implications from this event. So what's the true after-tax dollars you're going to be working with? Um, what are the asset protection issues you're going to need to deal with? And so making sure that, again, you're an unattractive target to frivolous lawsuits, divorce, all those sorts of things, and that you've put the right estate plan in place to navigate things for the future, and then really focus on what's possible, right? um, and then, with that, in order to put all that kind of planning in place, you really need the right team around you. So really having that team of consummate professionals who've done this before for families like you, who understand the complexities, not only from a financial standpoint and legal standpoint, but the complexities with the family issues that you're going to be dealing with, and have navigated that for other clients in the past. I think is going to be really important. And then one thing that we focus on a lot is, what we are really good at is identifying for our clients. We get to know our clients extremely well, and we understand what types of strategies and solutions are going to make the most sense for our clients. And we're going to explain the pros and cons of everything, and what are other successful families doing in their situation. But at the end of the day, um, then it's on the client to make a good decision. So if we're doing our job well and they've brought the right team around them, then it's time to just make good decisions. And if you have all that information in front of you, and you've a well reasoned plan with the right professionals around you, I'm very confident you'll be in a great position to make good decisions at that point.
No, Homer, this is really great stuff for the folks out there. You mentioned at the top of the show there are a multitude of different ways that sudden wealth can come into somebody's life. Whether it is that inheritance, winning the lottery is the age old example that we talk about, or the liquidity of a business, anything surrounding these different ways. Look, questions are bound to pop up for people. You just mentioned that idea of working and relying, on the consummate professionals. If anybody out there, Homer, in the audience today, maybe they themselves found sudden wealth, maybe a colleague, a friend close to them, a family member, and let's say they have those questions. What would be the best way they could reach out to you and your team just to open up a conversation about their situation so that they themselves can know, hey, at least I'm doing my part to take that positive first step forward now that we're in this position?
Yeah, I'd say the best way is always if you go to our website and send an email to us. It's going to be the easiest way to start a conversation. We can set up a phone call, do an initial discovery. So the way that we work in these situations is, we only work with families that we believe we can make a meaningful impact on. And so in order to do that, I think there's a lot of value to potential clients working with us, that we're going to spend a lot of time getting to know you, getting to know your situation, and getting to understand what gaps and opportunities might be available to you, to take advantage of this sudden wealth or anything else going on in your world. And so I think we would then create a very detailed review and summary of what you have going on and what opportunities are there for you before you have to make any sorts of decisions on where to go from there. And so we're going to give you an unbiased view of what we believe, based on what you tell us, is going to be the best route for you to take, and what options are available to you. So we do that, as a complimentary process at the very beginning to get to know any client, and we think there's a ton of value in that. So that's what we'd suggest: is reach out, set up a discovery meeting. We'll get to know you, and then be able to help you with the roadmap. Whether we're the right fit or not, you're going to get a lot of good, valuable information out of that process.
Fantastic. Well, Homer, look, I know you're a busy guy. You've got clients to serve and have those conversations with. So we'll let you get back to doing that. But thanks again for jumping on and diving into this idea of sudden wealth, and painting a brighter picture for some folks so that they can mitigate maybe some of those challenges that come along with sudden wealth. But looking forward to seeing you on the next one. And thanks again for today.
Thanks, Ryan. Good to see you as always.
Yeah, of course, Homer. And hey, look, folks, as always, we want to take a final moment and say thank you for stopping by and spending some time with us on the show today. If you did take anything away from today's discussion, you benefited from anything that Homer shared with us today, well, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button on whichever platform you did check us out on. That way, you never miss out on a future show where we dive into these different wealth management topics so that you and yours can really come out better for it on the other